Okay, I started the record. Okay, now the meeting's being officially started.
All right, and I
And we have no guests for public be heard.
Okay.
So let's get right into current business. Kirk is one of our special guests tonight, and Kirk and Deborah are going to give us an update on the Housing Oversight Task Force.
Yeah, Deborah, you lead the way. I'll just chime in when that.
Please chime in. Okay, so we've been twiddling our thumbs for the last year and a half.
2 years.
Well, it'll be 2 years in July,
And,
and we include counting writing the grant that started in March. So yeah, that's 2 years. My goodness gracious, when you're having fun. So we didn't know in advance of coming to this meeting tonight exactly where we would be in terms of delivering our version 2 of the draft zoning and subdivision code to the town board. We thought actually it might be happening this month, which ends next week. We anticipate now, we're fairly confident it's going to be in April, potentially in early to mid-April. And we're working very diligently on the final aspects of it. Just to give you a quick update. So since and I know we've been to you before, after our May presentation, we did get comments. We got your comments, we got other comments. We met with the planning board members a few times and other committees, and we took all of that information, plus we fleshed things out that we felt needed to be really worked through a little bit more. We hadn't quite gotten, and we heard, the messaging, some of it was like, we need stronger mechanisms for affordability. Some things we could do in zoning, some things we couldn't. So we took all of that and basically spent a lot of time working through how to produce a draft law for the subdivision and zoning that would meet all the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan, address the comments that we got that we could address in zoning, and then also to acknowledge all of those things that we heard from various people, including ourselves, that didn't fit into zoning, but we wanted to make sure we flagged them and pass those on to the town board. They were policy issues, as well as other things in zoning that were outside of our purview that went into sort of a housekeeping list. Nan, very thorough professional, and clearly identified things that really needed attention, needed to be corrected, but they were really not part of our scope. So we did all of that. Let's see, what does that bring us up to, Kirk? The fall, Christmas?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think we were just discussing, we've been talking about how we're rolling this out. So what we're working on now is finalizing the draft, preparing a very comprehensive executive summary with appendices, an updated PowerPoint that was going to be presented to the town board. So there'll be a number of documents that will accompany our report, which is what the executive summary is. And then there'll be the draft zoning and subdivision regulation updates as well, which is a lengthy legal document. Just also want to say that we've had a review by the land use lawyer for the planning board, which has been really terrific, John Lyons. He's wonderful. And the planning board feels very confident in his work as well. We sent the draft to the county planning department, to Kai and his colleagues, the planning director, and they looked at it, and we had an informal meeting with them. So at the moment, these are still outside of a formal process, and this is to help us to get it as right as we can for when we present it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, Kirk, if you want to talk about discussing how the housing committee might
Yeah, sure, I could.
report from you guys.
Yeah, I could say a few things before you throw me out.
You got a few things on your plate.
Yeah, no, it's tonight. But one thing we were just discussing, Deborah and I, just now prior to this meeting, was that all the while we've been in this thing. We were thinking that the housing committee would play an integral role of this process, right? And it hasn't quite unfolded in that way because it's taken longer than we thought, first of all. But now we are at that point where the housing committee can and should and will likely play a major role in bringing the message out to the community. And I think that time is upon us. So one of the things that I feel like as soon as possible, Deborah and I would like to give you, the committee, the housing committee, at least the summary documents, which are two, from NAN, based on this entire life cycle of this project and where we are now as a result of all the efforts we've made. Okay. And so those two documents summarize the revisions that we're presenting and the benefits of those revisions. Those are the two documents. And so I think that document would really be a good first view. We would probably get that to you in the week prior to we're going to meet with the town board, because then we know it'll be final and we can share that with you.
It'll still be confidential.
It will be a confidential share. It will
Right.
not be for public disbursement.
It'll be marked draft.
And then once we give everything to the town board, everything will be shared with you. And our view of the executive summary is that that's probably the document that most people will read. If anyone is going to read anything, they're going to read the executive summary, right? And a few people, like on a single hand, you'll count them, will read the code. But the majority, so we're writing that document with that understanding, that's where people are going to get the information that we feel is necessary for them to understand the breadth and depth of this effort and the cause and the motives behind what created this initiative, which is the comprehensive plan, and then the sharing of the benefits of that initiative as a result of that, of these efforts. Hopefully that's the kind of messaging where we would like to go out, right? Those two things. I think the origin of it and where we're going now, and what people can embrace as a result of this, and the excitement. There's excitement because we're actually achieving something significant that the comprehensive plan set forth, 4 years ago.
And just to add to that, we don't know quite how it's going to unfold, because we hope and expect that the town board is going to accept our submittal for a formal review and have that process begin as soon as possible, so that it will go to the county for their formal review. It goes to the county planning board with the staffed by the planning department, and it will also go to the town planning board for their formal review and comment. And then there'll be a public hearing scheduled, and that will enable people to develop comments and submit them on the record. If there is an opportunity, and I think we don't know this yet, but once we are at the point where things have gone to the town, I have to say, everybody's been really a stalwart on our task force. I think they're looking with great delight and anticipation that this is going to be passed on. However, that said, we may need another conversation with you, particularly the housing committee. I mean, of all the committees, it just seems like because so much of what went into this came from this group. So I think that might be something that we can talk about for, another session.
Yeah.
So there's just one public hearing, that's it for the public?
Well, it's one public hearing scheduled. It may be a hearing that doesn't end. In other words, they don't start it and end it in one meeting.
I
It may
see.
be certain, several dates.
There's a public comment period, essentially.
Like online, like we had before.
Yeah, it'll be open to the public for comments, and then there'll be a public hearing also within
Right.
that.
And there may be multiple dates of a public hearing.
Yeah.
You're right.
We don't really know how the town board is going to address that.
I
That
see.
they get to
Right.
decide that.
Urania?
Can I just get a quick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elevator version of the process? I just wanted to write down step
Yeah.
1, step 2, step 3.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you.
We will be releasing, and Deborah, feel free to step in at any point. When we go to the town board, and whenever that date ends up being, on that date, we will be providing them with the revised version of the revisions we're making. And then along with all the other documents that Deborah listed, it will then go into a discussion by the town board, but likely into a vote by the town board to, what's the phrase?
Okay, so the town board, we give it to the town board.
Right,
They have to draft and vote on a resolution to accept it formally. So it's a resolution of accepting what we've provided them. So number one is we provide it. Number two, they have a resolution to accept it. And in that resolution, it will say, and they are sending it to, they are beginning the formal process for review by the county planning board, by the town planning board, and the seeker process for public review and comment. So a lot of that will be wrapped into, we anticipate, this resolution. And then at that point, all these other things will happen. And they will also release it to the public, probably onto the town website. But again, that's the town board has that process at that point. And
Right.
Release documents at town board, obviously also in front of community. Then the next step at that meeting, they have a resolution to accept.
unknown.
it could be at that meeting, it could be subsequent to the meeting.
Okay.
So they
That's
have,
the next step. Oh, and then the third step is that there's a public hearing.
No, well, there's a period of time when all those lists of people that receive it, they have 45 days, they could extend, they can make a request to go a little bit longer.
Okay.
So there's an anticipation of like 60
45
days
to review.
to
and
review.
then when
Those
is the
official,
public hearing?
those official responses then come
Unknown.
back, those official responses then come back. There's an opportunity for those responses to be looked at and incorporated into the document, right? Because there might be recommendations made and there'll be discussion for that. And then at that point, though, that'll be, as Deborah said, to be determined, but that's the first time that the public comment period can be established, so that all of this is set up to last about 60 to 65 days. But that's the anticipated length of time, but it could go longer.
so
Yeah, no, I understand that. I just want to make sure I understand the process.
the process is
Public
not,
wants to know.
it's not bullet.
Yeah,
It's-
it's not linear.
There's a little bit of unknown that go into this in terms of the timing. Part of it is because it's the town board's decisions as to when they actually submit it, start the formal process, adopt the resolution, submit it to the planning board, the county, et cetera. But when they do that, then a clock starts.
Right,
And it goes to the county. There's a 45-day clock that starts for the county's formal review. And I think it may be the same amount of time for the town planning board. Kai, you
Yeah.
probably know this off the top of your head.
Yeah.
Sorry to.
yeah, it's
I
roughly-
don't for the town board. I don't know if it's parallel, but yes,
No.
for the county
Yeah.
planning board.
Okay,
Susan.
I wonder who manages the seeker process? Who's
town
it?
board.
Town board is the lead, town board will state themselves as the lead agency for it, and it'll be up to them to manage it.
Right.
And the other element to this is that when the town board passes that resolution, the document we're referring to immediately is classified as a draft law.
Okay.
It no longer is a list of recommendations. It takes on a new classification of a draft law. And that's when this whole legal process begins of what, Deborah just alluded to, of all the reviews and secret process and public comment process.
I mean, our hope and goal is that this will be a fairly straightforward, smooth process, and that there'll be sufficient opportunity for public comment and input, and that, the bulk of our recommendations will make it into the law, and which is part of the reason why having it taken informally reviewed by the county planning department and the town attorney was so important to us, because we wanted to red flag anything that just didn't make sense or wasn't going to fly or wasn't going to be legal, etc., so that it's as good as we hope it can get in that phase.
Okay.
Urena, and then we
So-
should finish up. So
So, I just want to, because I know when I'm trying to give information or educate or outreach, the public, I'm not asking exactly the time. I just want to know kind of like, after this, then this, then this, the public be heard. And then what happens after the public be heard? Like, I just know that that's what's going to be in my ear. Well, do we
Okay.
get a chance? You know what I mean? So I just
So
want to.
here's the thing. We will give you a very point by point list. I don't feel confident in giving it to you tonight. So it's not the time for you to be sharing that information. This is all in advance of our formally giving it to the town board. When we are ready to do that, we will do our very best to get you as good a list of the process as we possibly can, so that you can use that in your communication. So, and this may get into another conversation, but our hope is that the housing committee will support the law and not come out swinging in opposition, because we really need your support. There are a lot of people in this town that I think may not feel that way. But a lot of this came out of the work of this committee originally. And so we're hopeful that it will meet with your approval. If there are things that can be improved without throwing out the baby with the bathwater, we think that's fine. That's what the process is supposed to do. And so we welcome the opportunity to talk with you about it when we have the material that we can share with you. I think that's really the best we can do at this point.
Yeah, I agree with everything you just said.
Okay.
well, I'm sure we're going to be talking about this again. So
Feel-
Yeah.
we'll let Kirk leave now so he can prepare for the Woodstock Housing Alliance event this evening. Thank
Okay.
you, Kirk, for coming
All right.
tonight.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's good to see everyone.
Good to see
See you
you.
later.
See you a little bit later.
Yeah, I'll
Yes,
see you
ma'am.
all later, maybe. All righty. Bye.
Right.
And now we can move on to the Granicus discussion. We had a subcommittee that formed at last month's meeting. And I know you guys have been doing a lot of research, and you had a meeting with the building department and you met last night. And Kai is here also to share his thoughts on the platform. So how should we proceed with this conversation? Because I'm guessing the subgroup has things to say, but I don't want to make Kai stay for the next 45 minutes if he doesn't want to stay that late. So
Well, can I just make a suggestion, if that's
Sure.
the case, and ask Kai if this makes sense? So we looked into Granicus. I think we want to give maybe a quick summary of that. The county has been using Granicus, so that's something we have in common, and sharing what they have with the town. So it might be useful to get Kai's input and sort of have those both things happening not simultaneously and sequentially, so that then if there are questions, both for him to know what we learned and for we to know what the county has in terms of its toolbox using this company, and then think about what the county, from their perspective, looking at all the towns, if they have any thoughts about how best to proceed with this issue and what are the best tools that they could recommend that are available to us, and have some Q&A. So that's what I was thinking.
Okay, so you guys are going to outline sort of your broad findings, the subgroup will, and then Kai can chime in. Is that what you're thinking, Deborah?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
All right, great.
I think he should, yeah.
Okay.
So how do we start this whole
I
thing?
think we also have definite direct questions for Kai though, based on last night's meeting. So I
Yes.
don't want to miss that either.
Right. So maybe we should get into that, do a quick thumbnail and then get into the his input and the questions we have for him pretty quickly.
Great.
Make sense? We didn't plan this out.
Who's the best thumbnailer?
Here, who's the best thumbnail? Maybe
Well,
Laura.
Laura,
you do a thumbnail?
yeah, we didn't ask you, but you
Yeah.
could.
Oh my God.
Well, you, as we were saying last night, you're looking at this with fresh eyes, which is helpful to all of us, I think. We've been.
Yeah, but I suppose the thing that I was thinking was that because you'd gone and then spoken to different people and had an insight as to how Granicus is currently working, I'm not sure that I want to miscommunicate or confuse the issue by saying, well, this, so yeah, it's
So
because
okay.
that's
I'll
why
do a high level, and then Laura, jump in with the stuff you did last night, and then we'll have Deborah go into the county, and then Kai
And
will.
County and also the state, because that's new information. We have
yeah,
some-
because what I talked about last night was the information I got on STLs from looking at all the other, how
Right.
the towns are doing it rather than to do with Granicus. The notes I made about Granicus was the meeting that we had, but then obviously, yeah, that had moved forward. So I'm,
Right.
I don't,
All right,
yeah.
so I'm gonna thumbnail the
Good.
Granicus meeting, correct?
Right.
Yep. Good.
Okay, here we go. We had I don't know, hour and a half meeting with Granicus representative that showed us online how the program works, and basically, and trying to get this is the high level quick points, is that first thing and the most important module, there's multiple modules that you can buy, and the county uses, and we use from the county, let's not get in the weeds about that, but we get some information from the county on the first thing, and the only, like if you were only buy one module, it's the first thing is the address identification. And that goes over 70 different platforms. There's more, but the 70 most important platforms being like Verbo, Airbnb, etc. It crosses over 70 platforms and cross-references them and looks for activity, and then identifies based on the county tax bed who is doing short-term renting and who's not. But it also catches people that might still be in the in our town, as an example, but are not registered. So it catches the illegal activity as well. And so it does it every so many days. It will go on at different times, and every 3 days it will go at different times of the day and capture literally like snapshots of what's happening in the activity. And this is important because sometimes people will try to like illegal activity will try to close down and then they want to make a booking, say for the weekend. And so they'll unhide their listing, catch some, like get some reservations, and then they close it down again. So that can happen at any time of the day, on any day of the week. And so this is why they are every 3 days or so many days, they're doing this at different times and capturing. The second thing is the second module, which is important at the moment. We're, I think, mostly using the address identification, but the second part is where they call it sort of driving through compliance. And the compliance piece, so when they're identifying address identification, which can go back to all the way back to 2015. So we started our short-term rental regulation law in 2019. They can go back to the beginning and see what was going on. But while they're doing that, they're capturing all this evidence, this very hard, cold evidence that can be then used later for compliance and maybe in going to the courts and things like that. The compliance also does things like potentially what they could do is immediately, quickly send out a letter saying you're out of compliance. And the next thing is, this is what you have to do to get into compliance. And then this is what happens, sort of kind of a carrot. And then here's what happens if you're not in compliance. And a lot of folks get that now today from the town and they go, oh, they're not paying attention. They don't really know what's going on. But with Granicus, page 2, 3, 4 shows actual photos that have captured their activity on these 70 platforms or however many platforms they're at. So they kind of go, oh crap, maybe they do know what's going on. And that, they said, brings up compliance 81%. Then they have another section called 24/7 hotline. So they said it was anonymous, but we'll just have to double check on that. But neighbors can complain or say, hey, there's a short-term rental next to me and I don't think they're legit. And there's, complaints from neighbors or whatever, or the bears or the garbage or the sound or whatever. So they take care of that too. That's another module. They also have rental activity monitoring, where they look at low, medium, and high activity. And this talks about the cost, tax base, fees. And this is where you can tell if they're maybe going past the 181 days and the weekends, or if they're not, and what's really going on. So that's also kind of part of compliance, but also making sure that the town or the county is getting their revenue. So the other, so there's sort of the main 4. On the day that we had this interview, which was February 22nd, 2023, they found, when they did a snapshot, they found 382 unique rental units in activity. And that meant that if we have 280, there was 105 illegal activities going on the low season. We're in winter, which is the low season. So that's kind of a big deal. As you can imagine, in the summer, there's a lot more of that activity. What they can do, which is kind of interesting as well, is they have someone, and we need to follow up on if this person knows enough about New York State law, but he can come in and do an audit, kind of what like Nan did for the zoning, come in, see what our law is compared to other laws, and how good or how bad or how effective or what we, just do an audit, and that's for free. And then we can after that choose to pay him as a consultant to help us rate short-term rentals, just like Nan Stolzenberg, that we're paying her to help us with the zoning laws. And the other thing real quickly is, what I want to say, there's one other thing. Oh, one of the main things is they talked about, we have a really low, our fees are really, really low compared to other towns and municipalities. And specifically, they say that you take the median rate. So on that day, she said the median rate was $273 a night. And then you times it by 2 or times it by 3. That's usually the formula that they use. So that's kind of interesting information. And I think I reserve the right to remember something, but I think this brings me to Laura, where she then took off in her own and went and compared with other municipalities in Ulster County. Okay, go Laura.
Okay, well, you would like me to just give an overview of what the other
Yeah.
towns are sort of doing in terms of the difference between. Yeah, so I looked at a number of the towns that were, you know, in the Hudson Valley, and there is a real range in terms of the fees, how they run the whole process, what the laws are, what the sort of, you know, ways to encourage people to you know, to comply, and what, you know, both in terms of incentives and, you know, sort of fines and things like that. So I sort of then focused in heavily on 2 that were more up to speed than others that had reviews recently, and I felt most reflected Woodstock, which were Rhinebeck and Shandaken. And what this sort of revealed financially is that we are sort of very far behind in terms of the revenue we generate for annual permit applications, in terms of occupancy tax, and in terms of operating licenses. So, you know, that's something we were discussing last night that would be really useful to look into, and to sort of find out, we needed to find out if there were actually any limits at the town or county level that would prevent us from increasing fees. But it does seem from Rhinebeck, and even certainly from Shandaken, which is obviously in Ulster County, that we have more scope to generate more income, you know, through those channels. The other thing we sort of looked about was what other towns are doing to increase compliance at the local level. Currently, our town, we rely heavily on the courts sort of following through on issues of non-compliance, which sort of really means that very little, it's quite, you know, ineffective in following through. So whereas other towns have, you know, developed tools that allow them to sort of police and, you know, what's going on, and you know, get compliance up. So for example, Rhinebeck has a stepped system of fines. Currently Woodstock, what happens in the town is they say, well, if you're not in compliance, you know, we will sort of, you know, come after you. There's not really a clear fining system. It's not being followed through. And our law says that we may or may not revoke your license, whereas in Rhinebeck, they have a step system. So I think it's Rhinebeck. First offence is $1,000 fine. Second offence is $2,000 fine. And on the third attempt, it's 3 strikes and you're out. Your license is revoked and you're not allowed to reapply. And actually, one of the things that again, someone might want to correct me, that Granicus, one of the modules that they offer, I think it is the it's the module to drive compliance. They also, as well as sending out the letters, have a way of collecting the fines as well. Just to say, I mean, again, obviously we have someone in the town that could potentially do that, but it is something, if we had that module, that would sort of happen. And then in terms,
can I just chime in there?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so they have the ability to collect payments online, and through like a mobile platform, which they say drives compliance, because it's just way easier for someone. If they get an email, they can just click the link, pay the fine, and that's it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So
Kai, is that direct debit? Like you have to put your credit card on there, and it's not the person going, okay, I'm going to pay it. It's directly debited out.
Yeah, like they can collect it and then they send it to the municipality.
Yeah.
Like, meaning they don't take any money. It's just the idea is that if the reason they're not in compliance is because it's a barrier that it takes, you have to, they get a letter and says you're out of compliance, you need to pay your penalty, but you have to go on the town of Woodstock website or send in a check. They're just trying to remove those barriers so that people just get into compliance.
What about people that just go, I'm not gonna pay? That's what I'm saying, direct
So-
debit.
I'm not sure I understand your question. I don't want to interrupt Laura though.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
Deborah
yeah.
wanted to add something.
Well,
Deborah?
I guess when Laura's done, I think it would be helpful to have Kai talk about some of these modules and also what the county is doing. And because I was going to ask him questions, but I'll hold those questions until we get more from him and hear what Laura has come up with.
Yeah, I mean, the other things were more sort of on the details of looking at, how other towns are sort of dealing with, or addressing who and what, qualifies for a license. So, I mean, yeah, it is sort of quite granular information, but some of the sort of things are quite interesting, which I thought quite powerful in terms of, how quickly complaints are dealt with, what's the process. So for example, other towns are sort of saying, if the complaint's raised, hosts have to, or managers have to deal with it within the hour. A response has to be documented and submitted to the town within 24 hours. So it's a much swifter process. And yeah, and then another things, I mean, again, I don't think this happens in Woodstock, but looking at sort of home insurance and so basically sort of requiring hosts that they have insurance that covers them to be a landlord. It's not just done through the Airbnb platform or whichever other platform they use. Looking to other towns automatically send mail out to abutting neighbours and abutting premises by certified mail when there is a new application, and they give them 30 days to input. That is something that the town, for each letter that's sent out, the town bills the prospective host for that letter to go out. And yeah, just sort of tightening up around things like, again, garbage use. I mean, goodness, I know personally from experience in my neighbours that the Airbnb, they just put the trash cans out. The bears come routinely. They know when trash, collection day is. So looking really at having much sort of, more stringent methods to manage things like that. And then again, in terms of who can rent an STR, which I think the short term, the task force also made mention of, was looking at the maximum number of properties in streets, areas, zip codes, and really sort of looking back at the definitions of what does it mean to be owner occupied. What is the rationale about having a 180-day limit? Should that be changed? Should we be looking at what defines an investment property? Should people that have an investment property that they Airbnb, should they be able to, and if so, should they be paying need to have a special use permit, being charged higher fees and taxes? Yeah, and also about the license going with the property, with the person, with the host, rather than going with the property, and therefore not being transferable. So yeah, so that's what other towns are kind of doing.
And,
whereas I know,
Laura, wasn't it also the case when we met with the building department? These are some of the things that they, for instance, that the permit should not be transferred with the property.
Right.
So they seem very interested and supportive of having the system work with both the staff they have and the data that is made available to them. And so I just wanted to mention that. And then before we go on, whenever it's appropriate, I'll just very quickly give an update on the Hinchy law.
Yeah.
Laura,
ahead,
did you,
Howard.
Laura,
Hey, Howard.
did Rhinebeck or Shandaken indicate what their permit fees are?
Yes, they did. So I looked, I mean, these are on their, their permit fees are $150, whereas ours is 50. So that's just for the application.
I think
So
ours are
that's one-
75. 75. Ours
Oh,
is
so- all
75.
right.
Well, no,
well,
you're counting the bed and that's not, she's saying that's on top of it, but that's the same. But this
You get,
base one,
there's an application, and then also an annual operating license. So they're different. So we
And then
charge
there's
50, huh?
and then there's the beds, each bed.
50 to apply.
Yeah, exactly. 50 to apply, and then our annual operating license is 50 plus $25 for each bedroom thereafter, and we charge a non-owner occupied $250. So for example, Shandaken, they charge $300 for an owner for their operating license plus their bedroom fee, and then $500 for a non-owner. So that's double ours. So, you know, again, it's just about, I think there's room to revise that. And again, the occupancy tax, we are currently at sort of the lowest rate for in comparison to other towns. We're only charging 2%. You know, and even I think Granicus recommended or sort of suggested, did they not, that the average was 4%? But if you look, towns are charging up to 5% occupancy. So I definitely again think there's some room there to review what we're charging.
I think also an important thing is when we looked at Granicus, you know, we got to look at the numbers, but they sort of threw out a base number, and then we would get a discount because the county is using it. And we, you know, they're paying a certain amount, and we haven't gotten the final number. But really, even the highest number, if we actually started charging these, you know, like, and upped our fee, it would cover that cost and then some, and then some. So this might be a real, in a sense, you know, sort of take care of itself, you know, and take care of paying for the person that needs to look at it for our town. So anyway, and they have
The other thing as well to say on that, Kai, the notes that I made from the Granicus meeting was follows. We got the quotes that it was going to cost us $31,405 a year for the bundle for all of the modules. And what Granicus's figures show is that would result even then, just by using their modules, even without us increasing our revenue, through the increase in taxes that we would get through the picking up, you know, improving compliance, would be a 2 to 3 times return on our investment.
By the
So
way,
do you want to comment on any of the things that
Yeah.
have been said so far?
one more quick question. Did we ever find out if, because the occupancy tax is collected by the county, does Woodstock get any of that revenue from the occupancy tax?
Yeah, that was the first point I was gonna make. The hotel occupancy tax is administered and collected at this county level, and the local municipalities can't collect occupancy tax on top of the county's tax. And even for sorry, go ahead, Deborah.
No, I was going to say, but my understanding is that the county then distributes a portion of that tax based on population, not based on numbers of permits. Right?
That's right. Yeah, it kind of gets rolled into the rest of like the sales tax distribution, which is based on population.
that's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's
That's not fair. We have the most short-term rentals out of any municipality in the whole county with the least amount of population.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one too, because there's no requirement for where the allocation of where that revenue that comes up to the hotel occupancy tax from the county level that goes back to the municipality. That's just a general fund allocation. Does that make sense? Like, so in a kind of like, well, in a perverse incentive kind of way, you want more short-term rentals because you'll get more hotel occupancy taxes. Not to say that is the incentive or motivation, but it's an interesting way. The hotel occupancy tax, just like historically, was really to deal with the additional like incurred costs to public services for hotels from visitors originally. So it was just hotels, and you've got extra visitors that are using the roadways, using water systems, and things like that. So that was the original motivation for the hotel occupancy tax. Now it covers things like short-term rentals too. So just one more point on that too. County administers the hotel occupancy tax, distributes the funds based on population, not on the number of permits. The county has to go to the state to request permission to increase the percentage occupancy tax. And so last night at the legislature, they introduced a resolution to request for an increase in the hotel occupancy tax. So depending on where it goes, it's in the works that there would be a percentage increase up to, I think they're looking at 4% versus the 2 that we have now.
Can we find out how much we get? I'm sorry.
You just said 2%.
No, I mean.
No, but
in
like
dollars.
total dollar amounts. Yeah, I can ask about that. As you have it on your end too, so.
I have a question because Laura said that some towns, I think you said, I'm taking notes, so you said that some towns have an occupancy tax and ours is 2% and somebody else's is 5%. And I thought Kai said that the towns can't add an
Well-
occupancy tax on top of the counties.
Yeah, I heard that as well, and I think maybe what is happening here is that the county has a higher. There are other counties that have higher occupancy taxes at the
So
county
Rhinebeck-
level, and then so that funnels down to the
Like
local
Dutchess
municipality.
County.
So Rhinebeck might have a higher.
Yeah, yeah. I
Oh,
think
so that may be why. I think that Rhinebeck, so maybe it's Dutchess County was 5%, so maybe that's what it is. It
Right.
comes from the.
Mm.
Can I just ask one question, Kai? So
Mhm.
I thought that the note I took from the Granicus meeting
Mhm.
was that hosts can opt to pay their tax directly to the town. They don't have to go through the county. And that's one of the reasons, that's what some of the hosts do, because then then they're not on the county database, which is of what the rentals are. And that's one of the loopholes. And they can choose to be anonymous.
hosts can.
No, I
Okay.
think what it was is that Airbnb or they collect the tax instead of paying it to the county. That's what the alternate was. She
But they
said-
pay it to the county.
Yes,
They
she
do.
said that sometimes the STR owner of the permit pays the tax directly to the outlet that they rent it from, like
Yeah.
Airbnb or VBRO.
Yeah, so the county has an agreement with Airbnb where Airbnb collects the hotel occupancy tax as part of their as part of the fee on their website. Then they cut a big check and send it to the county based on all of the individual stays.
Right,
through
Right,
Airbnb.
but hosts can choose not to pay it through Airbnb
Uh-huh.
to the county. They can say no to Airbnb.
Uh-huh.
I choose to pay my tax directly to the town.
Well, I haven't heard directly to the town.
They don't.
I know they can pay directly to the county.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Maybe that was my
yeah.
mistake then. All right.
That's okay. I mean, there may be a process where
Yeah.
that you can pay it directly to the town, but I would
No, we need-
imagine that the town would just have to divert it to the county because
Oh,
the county
oh.
is the one who's collecting the
Right,
tax.
our supervisor says that the town does not collect those taxes.
Yeah,
Okay. All
Town
right.
has.
and there
Good.
this is a good segue into you, Deborah. And the state has control over a lot of taxes and which ones you can increase on your own and which ones you need permission from the state to increase. And so
Right,
Michelle
And-
Hinchy,
right, go
Yep.
ahead.
go ahead.
No.
I was just gonna say,
no, I do. Go
you-
ahead, do it, do it. Good.
No, I
Yourself.
think you actually know more than I do. She's introduced legislation to essentially, rather than, because there are some counties that don't have any hotel occupancy tax at all. And so what she was saying is essentially we should just regulate this at the state level so that
Yep.
everyone can administer a hotel occupancy tax.
Right, and her bill would, and this is where her staff said, instead of Granicus, is how they put it to me, they would create a system through the Department of State, which does licensing, and it would set up a data system they said would replace Granicus, but it would provide the same information to the towns and also standardize, I believe, some of the collection of taxes and fees. But I haven't seen the latest version of it, and they were in the process of kind of noodling with it, maybe.
Right.
Ty, you
We're
know
in
more
ledge
about
season
it?
right now, so
Right, they're in
Yeah,
budget. So after budget,
yeah.
we'll see more about what it would provide.
I have a question. I want to make sure, because I'm doing notes. So the legislation would enable every town to, or every county to
Town.
make their own, every town to make their own occupancy tax without asking the county, or I'm not
No.
clear.
No, standardized.
Right, it would be more standardized, but
We would all have the same occupancy
I think
tax.
the county is still the collector of the tax.
Yeah, the county's still collector, and I think her bill was really focused on the registration process,
Right,
like a state registry for all the Airbnb or all the STRs in the whole state.
right, and her other goal is, which we didn't get to, and again, Granicus doesn't have control over this, but the state can require every owner who rents a short-term rental to have, not only have their county ID tax number, but have a town permit number posted on their listing. So our VRBO or Airbnb, they can't have a listing if it doesn't have that number. They will be prohibited from having that listing if that number is not provided.
Also, a little background, which we missed. Granicus was also talking about how, actually, carry on, I lost it. It was
When
important.
would
thing
the-
you Just
oh.
said, lost it. Oh, no, lost it.
When would the New York State platform be up, do you think? Like
Well,
next year?
yes, yeah, that's what Laura was asking. So there's a sense of urgency. I think that they're aware of that. She's trying to get the bill passed this year and then signed by the governor. And I think that their goal would be to have the system up and running next year. They also have a list of penalties and fines, so that if they would have to verify, all these platforms would have to verify that their listings are actually registered and licensed. And if they're not, and they're posting them, that would be hefty, that would be a deterrent to them.
I remember. So one of the other things is I think this is where Hinchy is coming in and why that's important. And so I didn't give you guys a little background. So right now, and this has to do with when we went to the building department, our meeting with them and Granicus. So Granicus had told us that all of these platforms have, for tax purposes, the ability to, that short-term rental listing owner of a short-term rental goes through their listing and can go in and click on their activity and have it literally like PDF downloaded into like a PDF that shows their activity and exactly how much money they've made and what they need to pay and the amount of taxes. And this is the purpose of, they use this for their own taxes. And so currently our town, which was news to us, currently our town does not require that information, whereas it sounds like, I think Deborah was saying that Hinchy is saying this is going to be required, because at the moment, the version, the system that our town is accepting, the building department is accepting, is a handwritten log. So, you know, like when you go into an Airbnb and you just have a notebook open and someone signs in or whatever, or that they create a little, you know, log, like family, when you get a call, you write in what happened and then you turn the page to the next one. So it's a little bit open interpretation, based on, you know, assuming that the person's going to be honest or not. But in this way, Granicus said you can make it so that they are required to download that information if they want a permit, and have to give it to the town to prove that they've been only doing it for 180 days, that they've been making what they say they're making. So that has to do with also that activity. And I think, if I'm correct, Deborah and Kai Hinchy, why that's an important key of what she wants to do is she's saying, yes, we need to do that.
Yes,
To
exactly.
prove, it's like, you know, prove
Exactly.
that you are doing what you say you're doing, keeping everybody honest.
Exactly.
Yeah. And there's two, just to make it clear, there's two separate pieces to that, like the cap on the number of days that you can allow for the municipality or for the Airbnb is up to the local municipality. It could be all year long, it could be a certain number of days. To adhere and comply to that, you know, municipalities can track it in different ways. For the county, essentially when you're paying your tax bill, you're saying, this is how much revenue I generated, and this is how much tax I should be paying off of it. But there's not, what Granicus does is essentially say, like, we can, with a lot of detail, go in and see exactly how many days, exactly how much you're charging, and estimate what your tax bill should be. Whereas the county just does that through a less comprehensive process right now.
In our town,
Mhm.
Woodstock.
Yeah.
Is like even more like hand and writing.
Right. Yeah.
They just,
Yes. Right.
they're not set up with the ability that an AI is. That's
Yes.
They were
That's
literally
definitely true.
going back to prehistoric times in a sense at this and
Mhm.
where we are in today's day with the ability of what computers and artificial intelligence can do.
So I had a question for Kai about
Mhm.
Granicus,
Yeah.
which was, my understanding is, because the woman from Granicus said she was going to
Samantha.
Samantha
Yep.
would be in touch with you so that we could look at other options, but also what do you actually get that comes to the town in your shared services agreement? I mean,
Yeah. So we just get, because we're not a municipality, and we're interested in it, but we don't have the responsibility of enforcing short-term rental regulations. We just get the address identification right now. Because, I mean, this is evolving a little bit, but the thinking for the Department of Finance that holds the contract with Granicus is that all we need is the addresses, and then we can send out a letter for the tax bill for each of the short-term rentals. What Granicus can do is they can, similar to what a town does in terms of compliance for a registry for a permit, is it can send out letters to all of them to pay your hotel occupancy tax bill. So there's like two parallel processes going on a little bit. So we just get address identification, and then the Department of Finance sends out tax bills for the hotel occupancy
but if
tax.
Granicus, if the town did something different with
Mhm,
Granicus,
mhm.
how does that affect? Because they're saying this idea of a discount, and it just.
Yeah, I can explain that. So on top of us just getting address identification, you can, and which Woodstock has like a shared services agreement, or I'm not sure if that's the title of it, that if you request it from the Department of Finance, that we will send you the list of addresses that are in Granicus database. So what typically happens is like,
Which we do.
which you do,
Yeah.
and which is kind of like an as needed basis. I think in the agreements, it says quarterly. I pulled it up, but I don't think that's been happening. And so that's a different issue, and that kind of has to do with like the former finance commissioner and the priority at which they were giving to sending out the data to the municipalities
Oh,
for the short-term rental. That now, though, if anyone's been paying attention, is changing a little
Yes.
bit. And so I think there's,
Gonna
you know,
get better.
yeah, it's gonna get better. Fingers crossed. I think it's kind of like a
Yeah.
guarantee that it's gonna get better. So you can sign that agreement. We send you the data as much, as quickly as possible. I have access to the data and I could send it very easily, pretty quickly to the building departments, but it just wasn't as much of a priority to the Department of Finance. Last piece, there is another shared services agreement through, I believe it's ESD, which is Empire State Development, which is like the economic development department for the state, that not just for short-term rentals, for any kind of like shared services agreement where the county is providing a service and it can be shared amongst the municipalities, they will reimburse you for that shared services agreement at a certain percentage, so that like the intention is, rather than all these municipalities setting up their own services, what if the county just did it and provided that service, and there was a cost savings to all the municipalities because you're doing it together? And we want you to do that because we want you to save money, so the state will reimburse the county for providing those shared services.
But does the town get charged?
So what happens is essentially, this is what Dutchess County has, and we're trying to make contact with Dutchess County to get the details on their shared services agreement that they have with the county and the municipalities, is we get data, but then if you want to set up your own, account with Granicus and get address identification and other modules, you will pay a certain amount, but it'll be a lot less than if you were just doing it on your own, because of that reimbursement from the state. On top of that, depending on how many short-term rentals you have, you could pay it back completely. Like in the case with Woodstock, because there are so many, it would pay it for itself. In somewhere like Denning, they would still be paying because they're paying for the service, but they're not really getting that revenue because there aren't that many short-term rentals there. I hope that all made sense.
But
So I
you
guess,
have to do that first before we can actually.
yeah, so that's kind of what I was gonna say, knowing that coming here tonight is like, we want it to happen as quickly as possible, and it could happen very quickly now that things are like shifting a little bit. So that you could enter into agreement with Granicus and get reimbursed for a good amount of that.
Urana.
I have a quick question though.
Mhm.
When you talk about, when you talk about what you just said, my
Mhm.
question is really important, because right
Mhm.
now you're telling me quarterly, if that wasn't actually happening, quarterly, we got a static one-time shot at what the address identification. But what you're talking about with this shared service agreement, that if the county had, and we did it with you and all the payback, would
Mhm.
that give us, my question is, would that give us live access to the database at any time? So that
Yeah,
our
you would have, yeah,
guy could
go ahead.
pull in and see live what's happening.
Yeah, based on that 3-day period. So you would get your own kind of like login, and there's a dashboard, and it just shows you in real time
Right.
every short-term rental that is in compliance, not in compliance, etc.
So we don't have to call Kai and be like, Kai, can you? send us
Right, yeah,
Okay,
right,
cool.
yeah.
Ca- ca-
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Mhm.
Just one, can I just ask a question, Kai? So
Mhm.
I thought that I understood, again, I could be wrong, from what Granica said, that the database that is currently shared with the town
Mhm.
is one that is static. It's only updated every quarter. Whereas that if we were to have the module, it would be it's one that's basically continuously updated, so it's much more up to date. And the other thing that they sort of said about the one that is under the shared services initiative is that it doesn't fully identify all the hosts, whereas the one that they are sort of saying if we signed up for would be able to do that, so it'd be more up to date and more comprehensive. So is that your understanding? And again, if we were to buy into this, will we be getting the one that's the updated one, or the one that's only updated every quarter? Yeah.
That's what I just-
So there's like a couple pieces in there.
Mm.
Yeah, the static is essentially that it's static because we're sending you like an Excel sheet.
Snapshot.
A snapshot. Thank you.
One day.
But they have,
Right.
but you have, what you have is not static.
Yeah,
It's live
Yep.
access to the database.
it's live access. Your building inspectors could see in real time every like 3 days. Or however. Yeah. Or it would be updated every 3 days. So you'd have a really good sense of what's going on. On top of having, I think with address identification, you get access to all the addresses, and you get this dashboard. And then if you want to, you can decide to say, well, we want another module on top of this because we need help with the 24/7 hotline, or we want help with sending out the letters for compliance. You would pay an additional amount of money for that. But if it were through the shared service agreement with the county, you'd be paying a lot less than if you were just to set up a contract on your own with Granicus, which you can do anyway, and it may even make financial sense to do it anyway.
Because we could pay it through our fees if we increase those.
Yeah, what I'm not sure, what's not clear is like if you set up a separate contract, but we then have a shared services agreement, like can they
Can they meld them?
retroactively kind of come together? Yeah.
My question is, in order for the county to do this better system, once they get their finance department straightened out, which they're doing, does the town have to like pass a resolution? In other words, is this something, whether it's the housing committee or the short term or something, do we need to be advocating for this to happen? Because right now we're learning about this because we're trying to figure it out, right?
Yeah.
Who else? I mean, it feels to me like there's a need to get municipalities to say, yeah, we want this better system.
Couldn't
right?
agree with you more, Deborah. And without saying too much, I've been trying to advocate for this to happen. While we were rolling out housing smart communities, I was saying another incentive should be that if you join the program, you get access to all this data and you get a shared service agreement. That didn't happen. But now potentially it could, and it could be another incentive, but everyone's already joined. But the thing is that I know Woodstock, you're talking to Granicus, Kingston is talking to Granicus, Marbletown is talking to Granicus because they're good at, their sales team is very good. And the service is needed, but it's not just Woodstock that needs these services, and it does cost a lot of money. So why not try to do this shared services agreement?
A quick thing, I just want to put two things out there that I don't know if everybody understands big picture here. The other thing that we didn't even get into, there's the 4 modules, but there's also like, they could basically do our whole program that we're doing right now and put it online, which would save building department a lot of time and energy. Because all of this stuff could be streamlined and connected to the county because it's talking to in the same computer sort of software, and set it all up at the same time. If anyone wants to, instead of calling 100, they get 100 calls a day or whatever at the building department, that they could just go online, which we don't have a really good website. And it's very, old school, prehistoric almost, that but what they have to offer too is that they can streamline this and have everything working together with the county, with the town, onto a computer operating system where I come to town or I'm buying a place and I just go online to Granicus and I find out, or through the town, however they set it up, and I find out if I can do it, and I can do all my application online. I can online. I can have my credit card on, it's all that. So it's kind of like not Amazon, but being able to.
Raina, can I interrupt for a sec? Because we actually have to move on now. We have a lot of stuff left on the agenda.
This is really important.
So if there's anything that Kai can add to, because we should also let him go. Let's ask that last question, and then we need to talk about how we're going to act on this. So.
No, I'm happy to answer any more questions if you want to email me.
Fees. How far up are we allowed to do fees? That was a big question from last night.
That's up to the municipality.
Deborah, you said that there was a maximum the state would allow us to go up in fees.
Yeah, I mean, Butch said something to us, and I thought this was the case, that we have some limitations in terms of fees that we have to be covering. The fees are used to cover the costs of managing the program, right? Isn't that
It can't
right?
be punitive.
Can't-
It has
cannot
to,
be
yeah.
punitive, Right.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
that-
There has to be a nexus between why you're charging the fee, because you need to hire staff to administer what you're the program, that the fee that you're creating. It can't be like $10,000, but it only costs you $500 to actually
No,
administer.
so Granicus was saying that what they do is they'll take that median, what is it, the median? Let me, my note.
The
We
average
take
nightly.
the median rate of what is being charged per night and times 2 or times 3. Now, we
Yeah,
can-
no, so
Is that correct in New York state law that we are allowed to do that?
there's a cap, but I'm sure you're probably under the cap by a good amount.
How do we
Um,
find out that information?
If you're under the cap,
What the cap is?
Probably our
Maybe
town
like-
attorney or.
yeah,
the-
your attorney, I
or
would
two-thirds.
suggest your attorney, and it would be looking at what your total cost is
And-
across the board to administer your registration program.
So I know Catherine needs to move on, and one of the things that we're gonna do is, as a subgroup, is meet with Bill McKenna.
Okay.
Based on everything that we've been learning, and I suggest, Urena, that some of these outstanding questions, like, the fees issue, we bring to the supervisor, because it's the town board who sets the fees. So, and they have to know what their ability is to set fees. They have to have some structure, right? That
Yeah.
tells them what they can
This
and
is all
cannot
new
do.
to the world, though. Short-term rentals never existed before.
Okay, well, can we move on? Because we're not going to decide this right now. So I'm sorry to. cut
Yeah,
this off,
it's a-
but-
The subgroup is going to take all of this that you've collected and
Mhm.
go to Bill and give a
Yep.
report. So
That's
Yeah.
right.
we
And
don't-
you should probably share it with the short-term rental task force, right?
I think that we should go to Bill, and then from there go to the short-term rental task force. I mean, I'm feeling like he's kind of. At
We
the
need
moment,
more
I
information.
think
from-
he's our next.
Yeah.
next,
Okay, great.
uh,
Okay. Thank you so much, Kai. We really appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you
and
so
feel
much
free to
for
you know, email me any other questions, and I'll keep you all updated on all the county shared services agreement as it
Great.
moves along. Yeah.
that's
Great.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good
And
night.
you.
And thank you all on the short-term subgroup for all this work.
Mhm.
I think it's great to have it clear.
Yeah, it's
Which
wonderful.
I think it is certainly much clearer. Um,
The
all
good,
right.
good housing committee team that's doing this. And
Mhm.
very good. I
Great.
think it's helpful. I hope.
All
All
right.
right, so Deborah, can you just do like a 2-minute update on the
Yeah.
housing? Spirit?
All I'm gonna say is that Kai is in the middle of drafting the RFP for that, based on the description that we sent. We filled out a form, Catherine and I, for getting consultant services. He's got behind because he's kind of swamped right now, and partly because of what's going on with the finance department. But he hopes to have it to us by the end of this week for us to take a look at and then have some input before it goes out.
Great.
Perfect.
That's less than 2 minutes.
Yay. All right, now Howard and I are going to talk a little bit about our follow-up with Bill McKenna on the deployment of ARPA funds for site development. Howard and I met with Bill 2 weeks ago, and it was a very good meeting. And Bill made the strong suggestion that we work with, I can never remember the name, Brinier and Larios, which is the town engineer. So we have a meeting already set up with Dennis Larios for April 12th. And Howard and I, Bill, are going to their Kingston office to meet with them. And we'll be talking through what we would like them to do exactly, which is survey the sites and create a plan for engineering the sites for water and sewer. So
Right, if I can cut in,
Yeah, of
Catherine,
course.
I think what Bill was saying is that we meet with Dennis Larios, and he has the knowledge to tell us what information we need in order to submit an RFP to potential developers. Because we were trying to guess what's the information that we need from the engineer. And it might be more than just a survey and its ability to support a septic system. I think we need to know the ability of getting water, the topography of the site that might restrict development, what's the geology of the site, things like that. So we're going to find out from Dennis Larios what is the information that we need in order to provide the RFP.
Right, but I think there's an interim step, but I will clarify this at the meeting. I think we're spending this $199,000 on the surveys and the actual engineering of the site. So in other words, we're not doing the RFP yet for a developer to come in. We're doing an RFP to get the sites shovel ready.
Right.
So the RFP is below that development. It's just to create the infrastructure. So, we need to figure out, is it a shared well system, or how's the water treatment work for these sites? Urena.
So you're saying, which was our debate last month, that which is what I thought from the beginning, is that this all needs to be done in order to write, because it'll go into the RFP.
Yeah.
And then at that point, we put the RFP out to get bids, correct?
Well, first we're going to be getting bids for the engineers to create the water and sewer system.
Yeah. I meant
Exactly. Then once that is completed, then we'll be doing an RFP for developers to come in and
Right.
say,
That's what I was saying. Yeah.
yes. So I'm seeing it as a 2-step process.
So the first RFP is for engineering,
Yes.
not connected to a developer who's going to.
Right. Because the people who do, like, construct sewers, for example, or wells, drill wells, or do septic systems would be different contractors from a Repco or a Habitat that would be actually building the homes.
Right. Okay, great.
Right. As far as did I understand it from Bill that we can hire Bernier and Larios to do the engineering, the civil engineering survey and whatnot without an RFP? Can't we just hire them?
I-
Because my understanding is professional services does not need an RFP. Because,
Well, they're gonna be contracting out the actual work. Like they're a management company, basically, right? So
no, they're engineers. They would
well, they're
perform,
engineers, but they don't do the actual work.
no, they don't do any digging or anything.
Right.
They would conduct a survey, they would test to see whether it was,
Mhm.
they can support a septic system,
Yeah.
things like that. They wouldn't be actually doing the infrastructure work. They're just-
Exactly.
Yeah, they would be our engineers. We do not need an RFP for professional services, is my understanding.
I don't think we need an RFP to hire Brinier and Larios, but I think we may need one for the infrastructure work, but we'll find out.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lorena?
I think maybe what Catherine is talking about the RFP for the engineering survey bit is because I think the town is bound by law to give everybody an opportunity to bid. Then we pick
Yeah.
based on, because there's like bylaws about that.
Yeah, it's-
The town has to do that, even if you like this one or that one, and he probably recommends that.
Exactly.
you have to
right,
take
but
steps.
you're out of professional services, you don't have to bid out because with respect to the library, we hired an architect to do the architectural work without going out for bids.
Okay.
We interviewed a few architects and hired one. We did not go out, we were not required to get an RFP for that. But
Yeah.
to do the work of the building, that we need an RFP. We have to go through the regular process.
Sure Bill knows.
I think I got that.
Yeah, and he called them the town engineer, so they must have some history
Yeah.
and connection
Well,
to the.
Walker's doing the work over at the city hall, was the architect to do the addition at City Hall. They didn't get competitive bids for that. They just hired them.
Mhm.
Okay, well, you don't want to get, yeah.
And thanks to Deborah also for sending all the documentation that she had in her files. So that was helpful.
You're welcome.
Uh,
Took me a
And,
while.
Catherine, there was one thing that Bill said that I don't have a lot of information. He mentioned that Ulster has proposed a $15 million sewer and water development. But I don't know the scope of that. Did he even mention that, did he?
He said, yeah, the county executive is
Proposing?
reserving a $15 million budget for water and sewer development. So
Throughout the county? That's throughout the county, right?
that's for the county. Yeah. Well, we'd have to figure out how to access that. But he spoke directly with Jen Metzger about it. So
That might have been a good question for Kai. Oh, well.
And the state is also, by the way, depending on what happens in the budget, but they are supposedly including money for infrastructure for housing.
great.
We'll see what happens.
So
Right.
just to update you, I did visit the site, the
right.
Xena Road site. It's right,
Which one?
the Xena Road,
Yeah.
31 acres.
Yep.
It's right at the corner of Xena Road and then just a few yards from the Stewart's gas station. There's this road called, oh, I forgot the name. I don't have it in front of me. Begins with a D.
Dolores or something. I can't remember.
Something like that. A small road that only accesses one or two properties. Anyway, the site is starts right, the corner of the site is right at that corner of those two streets. And it goes along Xena Road. There was snow on it. I couldn't really walk very much, but it was a sloping site. It's all wooded, obviously. But when the weather gets a little bit better, I'd like to walk it a little bit more, but I think it looks like an ideal place to develop housing right along Xena Road there.
Yes. Yeah.
Now, the other site, which is at the end of Summit Road, Summit Lane, whatever you call it.
Simmons Drive.
Simmons Drive, yes, I'm sorry. Now that's a site that adjoins the community center field is right next to that. It's also a wooded site, but quite frankly, because it's at the end of the road of those houses that are there, I think there would be resistance to developing, a certain type of housing, you know what I mean?
Figure out doing section 8
Well, the
housing.
one at Xena Road, there's, hardly anybody around there.
Mhm.
Yes,
Deborah?
Well, so I guess I would say that the houses there are actually pretty modest houses for
yes,
Woodstock. And that we're not talking about Section 8 subsidized housing. So, in terms of community acceptance, I'm not sure that I wouldn't dismiss it automatically, but I do think that wherever housing is proposed, there's going to be, neighbor issues.
well, that Summit Road site is also an ideal site because there's a road already there and it's just a
Right.
continuation of the same road.
Yeah,
I think both of them are very developable.
well, that's good. to have
Yeah.
more than
Yeah, I think the
one.
one with Simmons Road or Simmons at the end of
Simmons
Simmons
Drive.
Drive, the issue was about the water, because even out in the rec
Mhm.
field, like there's a wetlands there, and then you have Patricia Lane, because I've already heard about it from someone who lives there. The Patricia Lane, which you go up to Glasgow, go up Rocky
Yes.
Road, right,
Right.
that is kind of abutting that property, and so we've got two different sort of communities.
Mhm.
But I think that there'll be probably similar housing.
Mhm.
One thing,
Water.
so one thing I would say, the property that's right at the end of Simmons Drive on the left
Hmm.
was recently bought by a realtor who develops houses. I wouldn't say flips them, but they do them up and sell them. And she bought it for a couple of 100,000, maybe 300,000, did it up and just sold it for $1 million.
I know, I
and-
saw
and-
that. Hey,
Yeah, and
Whoa.
the selling point of the house was that it was abutting this land that couldn't be built on, so you would have the views. I'm just
Yeah, I
saying,
know.
Oh,
but that's the immediate neighbor.
Jeez,
Wow.
that's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Wow.
Too bad.
Yeah. All right, well, we
I'm in the
have,
wrong business, I can think.
yeah, we only have 2 minutes left.
Wait,
But
We
we
gotta
could go
approve the
for,
minutes, right?
Howard, you didn't answer the question I had. So when I was
Oh, I'm
talking
sorry. What was the
That's okay.
question?
with the Simmons Drive lane, the issue was wetlands. Did you
well,
find
we have
that
to
to
do
be
the
an issue?
survey.
Yeah, and I sent maps about that, Urena, that came from the county and also that my husband looked at, and we walked the site, and the wetlands are not everywhere. So there are
Yeah.
areas on that 10 acres.
That's why we would need an engineering report.
Yeah, you need to go that route.
Yeah, Brent, we would have the, Benier and Larios conduct a survey on that property to determine whether it was wetlands. Both of them. That's one of the criteria we'd need to know.
And, yeah, and then if there are wetlands, we have to get it DEC certified so that we
Right.
can build, so.
Right,
Right.
exactly.
And the other thing about that property is I think Kirk walked it with the project manager from
Mhm.
Habitat for Humanity. And if it became one of their properties, and there would have to be an exchange of property from the town because they need to own everything. But those would be first-time home buyers probably. And there would be, maybe, I don't know how many, a small number. And it's a community project. So it's a little different in how you present that to a neighborhood than, somebody coming in and building a bunch of apartments. So
Yeah,
that has some other assets.
yeah, that could help public opinion.
Mhm.
Well, our next step is to meet with the engineer on April 3rd. Is that what it is?
April 12th.
Oh, yeah, April 12th. And find out what it is we need to go, what our next step is.
Okay, now we can move on because it's actually 6:30. Do a short discussion of social media,
Maybe we should just.
or you want to table it for now?
Mm,
All right,
That's going to be a bigger discussion, probably.
yeah, that's probably true. All right, well, we can talk about it next time. Deborah? Oh, you're on mute.
So we don't have time to discuss it. I think, however, we're in a political season and in a very sensitive time, especially with proposing these zoning changes. And I would just say, and by and large, I think all of us have been really good about this, but you know, there's an awful lot of things that happen external to us on social media and that unfortunately are not helpful in terms of communicating facts, and et cetera. So the best we can do is just to, you know, kind of pay attention ourselves as to how and what we communicate as committee members. That's kind of what I just wanted to say. And it's hard because some of these things are pretty intense.
I think it'd be helpful if more people on our team were paying attention to social media and help to, or their own social media if they're getting tagged, and help to, because you want to stop misinformation and correct it with accurate information. As that is a form of communication that a lot of people are using in our town and happens in a really fast way, whether you like it or you don't, whether you believe in it or you don't. It is what it is, and it's out there. And it needs to be dealt with. It can't be just let go all the time. There's a lot of information, a lot of people, and one post can be read by hundreds of people at one time, and then they think that that's the last thing they read. That's what's going on if no one rebuts it. So I think what will help is if more people are involved and online and paying attention and help to stop misinformation and write correct, accurate information, and obviously keep emotive feelings and stuff, language out of it as much as possible.
All right. Should we
And I would just say, I think we have to be careful because, I mean, we have 2 new members. We have, you know, what actually do we know based on whatever the comment is? And, you know, be sure that we are, if we're going to respond to it, that it reflects the facts that we know. And so if you're unsure about that, then, you know, hopefully we can develop some ways to deal with this before the zoning comes out. That's the idea. Social media policy is to have some ways to quickly respond that are prepared and not, you know, you don't feel like you have to invent it.
Right.
Because everybody's knowledge base is different, and particularly new people have not as much. Laura?
I mean, this is a suggestion, and I appreciate it would take time, so it might not be viable. But just thinking about if we had an FAQ section, or you know, something on our website, or something where we could say, okay, here is, we just post it, this is, go here for the information on this, and we maybe just have the topics that are current, or where we do, and the ones that obviously we see something coming in that is potentially, you know, confusing, or you know, where there's misinformation going about, we just have something that where we address it, and there's a stock answer that we can draw them to, or indeed cut and paste, so that the message is consistent and accurate.
That sounds good.
Yeah, I
I
think
think we
that's
tried that. We
the
had one.
direction.
We are working on a messaging document, but
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
not as simple as it sounds, I think.
no, but we
Yeah.
do have some frequently asked
It's a lot of
questions, and
time.
they
Yeah.
could be revisited, and they need to be brought up to date to what current issues are, but that's really, I
Oh.
think that's what we need.
One major thing that needs to be dealt with, like as soon as possible, is that we need to, I think, put out another post to the town, to the world, to everybody about the Xena school. We did go through that. We worked with Repco, and it is not viable. And here's the reasons why.
We've got to frequently ask questions about that. I think we do.
Right.
Well, I don't think we have a full enough answer, and or it should be something that is accessible to us that we can copy and paste, because at the moment it is in the crawl of a few people who are influential in the town and are very intelligent and smart people, but they believe that we are misinformed.
Yeah.
So we have to inform them that we're not, and why.
Yeah. So I'll find that post. I think we
Yeah, that would be
answered a
helpful.
few questions about that, and see if it needs to be,
Yeah.
you know, changed at all, and
Right.
where it
And
is.
I think we should apply or add in and find, maybe to go back to the Hudson Valley One article, where a council member at the time, Lauren Rose, had a direct quote saying that it was. a possibility, but he was uninformed. He was uninformed. Unfortunately, it got reported because he was a town board member at the time. So I think people might have that stuck in their head, and we have to explain that that is not true and why.
What was it that he said?
I forget the quote, but I remember it because we had to deal with that when that came up, but we thought it was done and it's not.
Yeah.
It just came up recently that this is something that, and we-
People still don't understand it, so it's a good idea to explain
Yeah.
it again.
in
Yeah.
more detail,
Mhm.
and maybe just that issue, like, get that out there.
Yeah. All right, so the last thing we have to do is approve the minutes. So I hope this will be a short discussion. Any comments on the January 25th or February 22nd? Do we have a motion to approve both minutes?
I'll move them to be approved both January, February.
A second.
Second, all in favor?
I,
Aye. Yay. Do
Are we
have
gonna
a-
talk about next time, the Housing Oversight Task Force version 2 ideas for education outreach to do?
I'm sorry, what? I didn't,
So Kirk and Deborah presented, and then we just moved straight on to the next thing. But that we're going to, the housing committee, when it comes, that they're counting on us to help
Mhm.
do the educational outreach for that.
Mhm.
And is there gonna be some time that we're gonna talk about that before it comes out?
Well,
Like
they,
ideas what to do. I think that sometimes we're a little reactionary, and I think we should be a little more like at the same time, kind of.
well, they were gonna try to, they were planning on giving it to us the week before they give it to the
Well,
town.
we're not going to give you
not,
everything
you
the
know,
week before,
Yeah.
because that would actually be useless, because it's way too much, but we.
You know,
do-
I mean, like,
Executive summary.
But
okay,
we-
here's an example,
We,
like,
our
what we're
plan is, we're not done yet, first of all, so let's take the pressure off for a minute. We are planning, and Kirk and I need to confirm this with the task force, but we would like to give you some basic summary documents that Nan prepared a week ahead of when it goes to the town board as a confidential document.
I think what Lorraine is saying though is
Thank
how we have a plan to get this messaging out about all of the zoning.
Here's an
Like-
example. I thought of it as. a
Second, or were we, wait, were we in the middle of approving minutes? I'm
No,
lost.
we approved them.
Both of them? Both
Yeah.
of them?
Both of them.
Okay, I
Yep,
thought we
yep,
only
yep.
did one. No, I want to make my minutes right, so, okay.
Yeah, we approved both.
Okay, great, thanks.
I don't
Sorry.
think we're here tonight, and Kirk and I were
Yeah.
not here tonight to propose a way for us to work with you to develop messaging. We're at this point really trying very hard to get our work done. And then I think we can come back to you with a way that we could discuss this, but I don't think we can do that tonight.
Okay, so my point is that we're gonna have another meeting at in the 3rd week of April, and you're gonna come out with this in
Or-
April. All I'm asking is, do we have some, and or when are we gonna talk about? Before I'm thinking that meeting,
Mhm.
I
that we're
don't
ready, that we
know,
have some kind of.
Urena.
plan, 'cause
All
we do
right,
a lot
so
of things
why
next
don't
year.
Susan and I discuss this and we'll figure out something.
Yeah,
We'll
I
ask
just think,
everyone. Yeah.
I understand, and I think it would be great to have a way for you to have some planning behind it with our input, because you need to have our input. You can't just do it on your own. We're still wrapping up our work, so it's premature for us to give you
I
a
don't want your
certain
information.
or a
I wanna know
way
what our
that
plan
that
is.
could happen at
Okay.
this time tonight.
How
Okay.
about if
Do that.
Susan and I discuss and we'll communicate, a plan.
Sure.
We have to figure this out. So, but,
Yeah. Like,
we understand that the zoning, they're not ready to share the info.
That's not what I'm asking.
I know, but we
Stop,
also
stop,
want to
stop.
think about how, what we're gonna do.
I know we don't need to reiterate
Yeah.
that. I'm just asking
Yeah.
about what are the modes and how we're gonna do that, and when are we gonna talk about that? We don't have to talk about it
Right.
now. When are we gonna
Right.
talk about that to be
Yeah.
ready when they do give it to us?
And it sounds like that's what Susan and
That's what
Catherine are gonna
We will
discuss.
discuss and then we'll
I
communicate
mean,
that.
yeah, I mean, our modes are social media and the newsletter, but until
Yeah.
we have content of what the key points are, we don't really have the ability to put anything together. So,
Right, I just don't want the last minute reactionary that we tend to do, which is a heavy load on somebody at the last minute to have to spend until midnight or 1 in the morning to do. So
unfortunately, we're not in control of the content.
that's what
So,
we're talking about. I just want to know what we're going to do so that when it does come, that we then can create a plan. We have a week, they're saying, when it comes. I want to know when we get that, what's our plan?
okay,
right, well,
I don't
let's-
quite understand that, but we'll talk
Yeah.
about it. Not
Yeah,
in
we
this-
can talk about it more.
But we're
We
the,
should-
you know, we're the outreach committee, so we'll talk about it,
Mm.
sometime between, in the next week or so, we'll talk
Mhm.
about, I'm not sure what that question is without the content, so we'll talk about it, so I understand it and Catherine understands it. We'll make a meeting, a time with the three of us.
That sounds good.
Okay,
All right,
Okay,
Irina?
good.
yep, that sounds good.
We have a motion. I think we're wrapped up, right? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn?
Howard seconded.
I'll second it.
All approved?
Approve.
Aye.
By the way, what's
Two.
the procedure for the Housing Alliance presentation at 7 o'clock?
Did you register?
There's a link.
Oh, I have to register. Oh, that's what I
Yeah.
forgot.
Yeah, just click in and
Click it
It's
register.
in.
the housing committee newsletter that you got yesterday.
Yeah, I did see that. I forgot to
Yeah.
register. All right, I'll do that now.
We'll see
Okay.
y'all soon.
See you
All right,
all
great.
there.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Uh,
Okay.